Set. 4, 3, 1.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Sunday Morning Quarterback. Today, we are three pastors who love ministry, leadership, and sports. So happy today to have Pastor Luke Simmons from Redemption Church all the way out in Phoenix, Arizona. Pastor Luke, how you feeling today, sir?
I'm doing great, man. It is so cool to be with you guys.
Awesome, man. So excited. My dad is coming from Nashville, Music City. Dad, what's going on in Tennessee today?
It's going great. A little nippy. Had to bring out my coat, but all was well. I got blue skies.
Nice. And Adam texted earlier. He said, I threw up today, and so he's not on, which stinks because we're going to talk about preaching, which is one of his favorite topics. But so excited to have Pastor Luke on. Pastor Luke, we've never officially met until today, but I've admired you from afar and all your content you put out, and just super smart. But hey, we're going to start off talking sports, okay?
Awesome.
The reason why we did this is because I'm convinced all pastors are the same. Most of our brain power goes to ministry, leadership, our wives, and sports, right? So that's something we can all unite around. So let's talk baseball for a little bit, because rumor has it you played a little college baseball, and there's all this hysteria about the clock. So first off, tell us where you played, what was your position, the good old days, and then what are your thoughts on this new baseball rule? Do you like it or do you not?
Yeah, guys, it's awesome to be with you. So I played at University of Illinois in the Big Ten, Fighting Illini. I grew up in Denver, but headed out there because at the time there really wasn't anywhere to play Division I in Colorado. There was just Air Force Academy. So I got recruited to play for the Fighting Illini. I was recruited as a catcher, ended up shifting over to third base. Mostly I was just a left-handed hitter. So, I figured out that if you could hit, they'd find a spot for you. So had a really fun time playing in Illinois. Met my wife there. She was a swimmer. And so we met my freshman year and were engaged by my junior year and married by my senior year. And then just baseball created some real cool opportunities. Actually, a couple summers when I was in college, I went to Alaska. There's a really good summer baseball league, collegiate league up there called the Alaska Baseball League. They're famous for a game they play at midnight. They call it the Midnight Sun game because it's still bright outside. But I went up there and actually got put by God's providence with a pastor and his family, just as my host family. And that was probably the first time I'd ever really had a close relationship with a pastor. And I think just the way God used it kind of helped me see that you could actually be a normal person and do ministry. And even just what you guys, it's part of why when I found out about this podcast and started listening to it, I was like, man, I just like these guys. Like that's what I used to do with my host, Pastor Jim in Alaska. Is I'd play a game in the afternoon and we'd go home and watch the NBA playoffs. And, he had a couple of daughters. He didn't have any sons. So, but anyway, so I played at University of Illinois. You were talking about baseball. I love the rules and I've loved them out of the gate. So I know some people have really not liked it, but I played with some guys that needed a pitch clock. I just think for the most part, not only does the game finish faster, the early stats I've seen is that most games are averaging about 30 minutes shorter, which nobody has a problem with that.
Sure.
But, I think there's a couple of things that have been great about it. I think the pitchers are getting in better rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
And I just found playing ball, if you were out in the field behind a guy that was like a human rain delay between every pitch, that was brutal. You'd wait forever and then guys would make an error. And that was lousy. I also like that these relievers can't come in and throw a 1-rep max every pitch. That's what it kind of used to look like. They'd be, huffing and puffing back behind the mound, ready to like a guy squatting 700 pounds. And now they just have to get up there and throw it. So, I like that. I like the removal of the shift. It seems like there's some singles again.
Yeah.
Which, is kind of interesting. So it's interesting because on one hand, I think it's helping the pitchers, but it's also helping the hitters and it's also making the game shorter, like win, win, win.
Yeah, that's funny. So it's cool that you're from Illinois. So I, over spring break, my wife and I, we're in the South. We grew up in Virginia, but lived in Georgia and Tennessee for a while. So I'd never been out to the Midwest. So we went and spent a week in Chicago. And the first day we went, this is a pretty great day if you ask me. We went to Willow Creek Sunday morning, and then we took the subway over to a Cubs game.
Oh,
And
wow.
man, watching the game with the clock, man, the energy was up, the tempo was up. So you had the clock in outfield you were watching, you had the clock behind the batter, and then even like, catcher'd come up, he was on the clock. They'd switch innings, they were on the clock. The hit count, and so it was kind of a neat pace, and definitely kept your attention more, which is the thing that baseball's been struggling with. So I liked it. Just even live, it felt interesting, and it raised the intensity. I felt. Dad, what do you think?
I like it because not only for what was said, because I think when you're watching it, it's one thing when you're there, and I love to go to a baseball game. There's something about it that just it's true. America's pastime. You relax, and I really am able to relax and enjoy. But when you're watching it on TV, if you're not a 100% all-in fan, yeah, it's tough to watch. But when it is free flowing and it's quick and it's moving through the innings, I think it helps it a lot. I like the shifts, and to be honest with you, I like the fact that they finally pulled the plug on some real meaningful changes, because I think that's going to enable them to continue to look at it year by year and tighten down the screws a little bit more. It's always hard to make those first tough, real strong changes, but once that occurs and then you see the benefits of it, I think now people are really going to start looking at it a little bit more intensely to find out what can we do a little bit more, a little bit better to make this game great again.
Yeah, Luke, you're right there in prime sports town, man. You got D-backs, you got Suns, you got Cardinals. Now, tell me, are you a Diamondbacks fan, or if not, who's your team? And then what are you watching this year? Who you got your eye on, or what's intrigued you?
Well, the joke in Phoenix, since nobody's from here, is that the local teams are everyone's second favorite team. So you go to a D-backs Cubs game. You talk about
Yeah,
going to see.
yeah,
There's as many fans at a D-backs Cubs game as there are at Wrigley.
that's
I mean, it's
hilarious.
pretty wild. So yeah, I mean, my diehard team in sports is the Denver Broncos. I
Oh, there
grew up
you go.
in Denver. They're my team. They're my ride or die kind of thing. When it comes to baseball, I've always just liked players.
Sure.
Like my favorite game of the whole year is the All-Star game.
Yeah.
I love when at least they used to all wear their own uniforms, and so that's what I love. I've got the MLB package free through T-Mobile, so
Yep.
that's been pretty great. And I've got a 6-year-old son, my youngest, and he loves baseball right now. And so what we do is we'll just kind of turn on MLB, see what games are close, see who's up to
Sure.
bat, and flip around. And we don't have a real strong team we root for. I have a buddy, one of my good high school friends, played for about 10 years in the big leagues, and now
Cool.
is a coach with the Dodgers. So whichever team he's hanging around with, I tend to keep a closer eye on them. But yeah, that's probably most. I love the players. I mean,
Yeah.
there's so many players. Every team has a few guys that when they come to the plate, you want to stop and watch what they're doing. And I feel like that a little bit with basketball as well. I mean,
Yeah.
with all the
Yep.
Suns fever here, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. We're into the Suns. My little guy loves the Suns.
Yep.
But same thing. I mean, there's just so many good players in all these sports that, I mean, gosh, they're fun to watch.
Well, you just set up with red meat with the Broncos. This wasn't on the sheet, but we can talk it all day. So we'll go talk your Broncos because we love football. The draft's coming up. Okay, we already know who's coming out. We already know Alabama boys going to Carolina. So Adam, if you're listening, we already know that. We already know Aaron Rodgers is going to get traded to the Jets. So those are just some givens. The rest of it surprises. But let's talk Broncos for a little bit. Dad, I'll set you up on a tee here before I pass it off to Luke. How do you think Sean Payton is going to do this year? Because word is if Russ doesn't cut it, he's going to cut bait and move on. Dad, do you think Russ will resonate with Sean, and do you think he can get back to the old Russ?
I do. I think they're going to have a good season. I don't think they're going to have a great season. I think he's going to steady the ship, work on the foundation. They've got a lot of good pieces, but I think he needs to work with Russ on getting Russ to cook again. And so, it's going to be interesting to see what he does, if he focuses more on the run game, or if he maybe for the first time allows Russ to do what Russ wants to do with some wisdom and some guidance. Because I think Russ, in his heart wants to fling that ball around. And I think with some wisdom, some guidance, some good play calls, I think he can do it again. But that is a very tough division. And so I think that's going to hurt, but I think he's going to improve the team, bring it together, build that foundation, and I can see it the next maybe year, about 2 to 3 years. If they can get Russ back going again, I think they're going to be in contention. I like them a lot. I like that move a lot.
All right, Luke, what do you think? Your team, did you like the move? Do you feel confident? What do you think is going to happen?
I just gotta say, I hope Joe's right. Because man, I mean, it was so crushing last year. Like, the whole thought was like, man, we're just a quarterback away,
Yeah.
right? We ever since Peyton Manning, like, you know, they'd show the graphic every game, how many people have played quarterback since Peyton Manning left, and it was like, you know, in the hundreds, it felt like. And it's like, okay, we got our guy, and we gave away everything, right? Like, I was just looking at the draft. We don't, the Broncos don't draft till the third round.
Wow.
So like, they better get it together. I mean, they don't have any other choices, right? So it really is. And what's tough is, even I think with Russell Wilson at his best, he might still be the third or fourth best quarterback in the division. So it's going to be tough. But I feel like if you're going to make a big move like they did with Russ, then hey, go all in. And with Peyton, it seems like they did, Sean Payton. So yeah, I mean, we'll see. I'm not overly optimistic. Those freaking Chiefs.
Oh, man.
Hey, let me say this though. Let me say this. Sean Payton knows how to win with a good defense, a good team, and an aging quarterback. And so that's what he spent a lot of his years. So he already comes in with that understanding. And, you know, I still think Russ has got a few more years if he can turn that tide back to old Russ. But, you know, this isn't his first rodeo in dealing with an older quarterback. So I think he's really the right quarterback to set the stage for Denver.
See, we know the Chiefs are equivalent to the Warriors, and I don't think you're going to beat the Chiefs playing their game. And so I actually think he's going to dial Russ back, but have him be beginning of Seattle days. And I think because Denver has always been known for that vaunted defense, and I think Sean likes this as a test because, you know, he can go pound for pound with Andy Reid as far as wit. But I think they're going to try to build that defensive foundation. They're going to run the ball. And, you know, he's going to scheme up those little dump-offs, those little screens. I don't think it's going to be run and shoot, highfalutin like Russ wants to. And so that's kind of what I see. So I think Sean's going to take this challenge. But, man, anytime you're in a division with you got to do Herbert twice a year and Mahomes, I mean, it's tough sledding. So it'll be interesting there. And, Luke, you know, you're right there in NBA territory in the Valley. The Suns are probably going to win this series. Now, let me say this before I hand it off. This has been a fascinating series for you NBA people out there. You know, like we said, NBA is a players' league. But this one has been interesting because coming in the playoffs, everybody was like, Phoenix is going to the finals. It's happening. But then the first game, I was like, the thing nobody saw is they traded so much of their depth away, specifically their role players and their shooting. And so you got three great scorers, but, you know, you got to have those trenches guys. So that was the first thing I noticed. I truly believe that if Kawhi didn't get hurt, or if Kawhi and Paul George are playing, I think Phoenix will lose because they got to have those glue guys. So they're going to get past this round. I think it would have really helped them if Golden State would have lost yesterday, because if they would have went down 3-1, I think they would have ended up losing. Now it's 2-2. The young puppy Sacramento, they're good. They're really trying, but I just don't know if they can get over the hump. But I would love, Luke, I would love to see Golden State versus Phoenix, Kevin Durant versus old team. And I don't know, as everybody's putting dirt on the Warriors, I hope they don't make it back because I'm just ready for something new. But I think they're going to make it back to the finals. What's the buzz around town with Phoenix, and what do you think? You think they can make it?
Well, it's interesting because, I mean, people were so excited when we got KD.
Oh, yeah.
At first, it was like, gosh, we gave up a lot for that. And you know, the guys we gave away, everybody really liked. I mean, they were like fan favorites. But I think what last year showed, and maybe even the year before that, is like you were getting as far as you were going to get with the guys you had. You know, so you had to take a shot. The thing that's real interesting right now is we got KD healthy for such a short period of time at the end of the season, right? By the time he finally came back, you know, maybe a game or two later, he twisted his ankle again in warmups.
Yep.
And I think Phoenix is a little bit of a wild card for people. Like, we're kind of still figuring out what does it actually look like with these multiple guys. So I like the chances with the scoring threats. I mean, last year what happened is Booker would just get shut down and they didn't really have much other option. Aiton has been a little disappointing in the paint. He just doesn't quite seem like he's willing to go up and be 7 feet tall. So I think we'll see. I mean, that West is just so stacked. And it's fun to watch. I mean, I'm pulling for the Suns, but like you said, the Warriors are like the Chiefs. I kind of agree with that. Like I can't stand them and I can't look away, like where's Curry going to shoot it from now? So I think, there's going to be some great basketball here down the stretch, but I'm pulling for Phoenix. We'll see. Hopefully Chris Paul can stay healthy and we'll see what happens.
That's the kicker. He's regressed a little bit. Dad, take us out on the sports segment. Phoenix, how far are they going?
I got bad news for you, Luke.
But so do most Suns fans.
Not the big three, and I picked them, but it's not the big three; it's the big two, and they do not have that third star. If you put two people together, maybe they can equal that third star, but I just don't think that they have the firepower to get to the. I actually think that they could lose to Denver. And you're right, Joseph. I don't think that they would have made it past the Clippers. And Denver's playing some good ball. They did lose last night, but they're playing some good ball. And what I've been learning watching Phoenix is you got KD and you have Booker. And Booker has gone to that next level, in my opinion. He has matured in his game, and he's got that resiliency, and he just knows, hey, I'm good. And that may be because, in his mind, he's like, I got KD now. And so that's given him that extra boost of confidence. But I just don't know if they have enough. Now, that being said, I will give you some hope, Luke. You have a lot of good teams, but there's no great team. There's flaws in all the teams. Phoenix got some flaws. They don't really have a bench. Denver, we've never seen it with Denver. Golden State, they're a little older. And Sacramento, you thought, okay, they're going to blow through Sacramento. Sacramento's giving them one heck of a series, and it could go 7. And then you got the Lakers, they've got the flaws of their own. And then you go to the East, and Philly's not that as dominant. Boston's having a hard time.
Giannis is hurt.
Yeah, Giannis is hurt. So this is that time. I think if a team can catch fire and dig into that chemistry and just begin to believe in some new emerging stars pop out, I think anybody can win this. But the confidence I had in Phoenix going in, I don't have anymore. But I'm to the point now where I just want to see what happens. I just want to watch it. And that's when it's fun to be a fan.
Yeah, you're right about getting hot. When I was in high school, there was a couple, I got to be part of a couple of state championship teams. One year we should have won it, and the other year we shouldn't. We just got hot. And, a lot of it really is about getting hot at the right time. A couple of years ago, Phoenix had this unbelievably great regular season and just ran out of gas. And so, whoever gets hot is going to win. And as long as they stay healthy and get hot, that's kind of what it takes.
They've got as good as a chance of anybody else.
Yep.
They've got as good as a chance.
Yep, you're right. Well, fellas, we'll segue to our ministry and leadership segment. We could talk about sports all day, but it'll be fun to watch. Luke, before we jump in, share with us briefly about your family. Tell us a little bit about your church planted, and you being a preaching guy. We ask all the preachers this, so I know you've had one. What is your biggest preaching blunder? Oh, hold on. Just acquire 4-time Aaron Rodgers just got traded. Sorry.
Oh,
breaking news on
breaking news.
By the time this comes out tomorrow, it'll be like old news. But anyway, sorry, Luke. Sorry, this instant day and age, I just couldn't. I had to slip it in there. Tell us about your family, your ministry, and your biggest preaching blunder.
Yeah. So thanks. I been married to Molly for 21 years, and she's the oldest of 5. I'm an only child. So we've been quite an interesting thing to come together, but we have a large family. We've got 4 kids. Our oldest is junior in high school, Abby. It's 3 girls and then a boy.
Nice.
16, 14, 8, and 6. So I've got high school, middle school, elementary school, kindergarten.
It's never boring at your house, is it?
It is not. No, there's a lot going on. The bottom 3 are all into sports. My oldest is more into music and theater and stuff like that. So we have a full plate. Right now, I've been watching a lot of the main sport in my life these days is volleyball.
Yeah, there you go.
My daughter doing club volleyball. So so they're a lot of fun. The church is almost 15 years old that I lead. It's called Redemption Church Gateway. I was part of the team that planted it almost 15 years ago. And there's a long story that we don't need to get into. We originally planted the church called Second Mile. And then we're working with some other churches in the area on some other stuff, decided, hey, why don't we merge together? And we all merged together to become a church called Redemption. So I lead one of the congregations of Redemption. We're more like a local denomination, probably, though technically it's a multi-site church. But the church where I lead, about 15 years old. We've had good, steady growth throughout the whole time. We've got an incredible team. And it's a blast. So I love it.
That's awesome. What's your
Hey,
biggest?
he's trying to get out of his blunder.
Yeah, you just kind of slipped
Don't
up.
let him
In
get out,
all these years of preaching, Luke, what's your biggest preaching blunder that you can share with us?
Yeah. Now, I've got two. One is not really a blunder, just an embarrassing moment.
That's fine. That's fine.
The other one's probably more of a blunder. We're in a building that we built from the ground up and opened in 2019. And our first Sunday in this building, in the middle of my first sermon, I'm bending down to do some kind of illustration, and I hear my pants rip.
Oh.
And
I've done that.
I every however many months I get a hole right in the underneath part of my jeans, right? And so I knew, like, okay, it just happened. And so I'm still talking, and I'm just watching the people in the front row to see how big is this rip and how visible is this rip, and none of them were reacting. So I'm going, okay, maybe if I just stand real still, no one will notice. So I just stood real still and finished the sermon and came down and went over to my wife. We live about 5 minutes away. I said, hey, honey, can you go get me some new pants for the next service? So that's kind of a funny one. On a more serious level, I don't know, and this isn't a moment as much as just I'd say in 2015, as all this stuff was going on with Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, I think I wasn't very careful about how I addressed some of those cultural things.
Sure.
And I do kind of like drive by machine gun style cultural commentary.
Yep.
Kind of making a point, but not really trying to win anybody over or really teach, kind of almost using those moments as an opportunity to be snarky or to, finally maybe someone will listen to me, kind of thing. And so I just think that wasn't very wise. It didn't do a lot of damage then, but I think down the road, I think it just eroded some of my credibility when it came time to actually talk about real important issues in real substantial ways. It I just don't think it was effective. So that's probably not what you have in mind.
No, that's it. Yeah, that's great.
But I feel like that was a mistake.
Sure.
Not that I think pastors shouldn't speak into what's going on in the culture, but I think when you do it, you got to do it thoughtfully, intentionally, and not just kind of cavalierly and with kind of throwaway lines that are almost begging to be misunderstood.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. Not to jump back to the other one, but I ripped my pants one time, and I couldn't go home, and I had to go staple them together because I had another service I had to preach. I didn't have, it was like I had a suit jacket on, and they were suit pants. I couldn't just grab a pair of jeans, and I was like, service is starting in 10 minutes. Here we go. And I just stapled them, and I just didn't move. I just stood right behind the pulpit the whole time. That's the second time I've ripped my pants in 10 years. And I'm not a skinny jean guy, so I'm like, I don't know. Lord, I don't know what you're trying to tell me. But anyway, we'll jump into our next question. We appreciate you sharing about that. Luke, I've in ministry and pastoring, there's this Twitterverse of people all around the country, and it's just kind of everybody. We always say in ministry, my bullet fits your gun, shoot it. And that's the saying with sermons, but also leadership and principles and things we're learning. A lot of talk nowadays on preaching and leadership, and we love those. We think about them all the time. And so just personally, I've learned a lot from your stuff you put out, whether it's preaching tips or leadership tips. And so it's just been kind of fun watching. And so being able to do something like this now, so many different church contexts, and just to kind of sync up for a few minutes and talk about it is like way cool for us. So the two questions we have today are going to be church related and then preaching related. And so we're going to start with the first one, and this is based off of one of the tweet threads that you did. And I'm going to set you up where you can just kind of share your thoughts on it, and then Dad, me and you can kind of jump in and give our thoughts and talk about it a little bit. So here's the first question, Luke, that you posed. Why does a church and a ministry need both builders and sustainers? What do you mean when you say that?
Yeah, I think I actually tweeted some about that in response to someone else's tweet. I forget.
Oh, wow.
I forget the exact context, but yeah, I mean, I've just found over time, like, there's just different needs of different moments and different ministries in a church. And it's oversimplified, but I think it, just generally speaking, there's people with more of a builder mentality. They like to get it going. They like to cast the vision. They have the catalytic energy. They have the rah, rah, let's go. They can gather a crowd. They can get people. They can get it off the ground. And then there tends to also be sustainers, and sustainers are less likely to launch it, but they're going to keep it going. They're going to troubleshoot along the way. They're going to tweak it. They're going to improve it. And I really think you have to have a church with both. Mm-hmm. If you have a church with only builders, you're going to start a bunch of things, and then they're all going to die on the vine, because builders tend to get bored, right? After 6 months or so, they're on to build the next thing. And you're going to have a lot of people kind of left going like, well, but okay, we got all these cool things, but like, who's caring about these people? On the other hand, if you only have sustainers, there's not really going to be much growth. There's not going to be much innovation. There won't be much new. Things will just sort of steadily plod along. And eventually what happens with that is some momentum is lost. And eventually, so you really got to have both. And I think one of the keys in leadership and senior leadership in a church, especially, is trying to figure out, okay, with this ministry, what do we need right now? Mm-hmm. Do we need someone leading our guest services who's more of a builder? They need to, take something and really create a new approach to how we welcome guests and how we engage with people and how we do. Or it's like, no, we kind of like what we got there. We just really need someone to be a sustainer in that role. And I think as long as a pastor realizes I need both builders and sustainers, I value both, and I'm not going to ask one to do the other's role, then I think it works okay. Where it gets tough is when people who are sustainers are being asked to build, or people who are builders are being asked to sustain. And it's a recipe for frustration.
That's good. Dad, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I agree wholeheartedly, and it is definitely needed within a church. And it's interesting, as you were thinking and talking through that, I think it's important to ask ourselves who we are and at the different levels. And at the same time, it's also important to know your church. And so for me, especially in the type of church that I'm at, we've been doing a lot of building, and that's who I am naturally. But I also know, and I think that that's important for a pastor to know who they are and how far they can take it, and before you pass it off. But I also think it's important to know who the sustainers are, because in my ministry of 25 years plus, there's been people that I passed that on to that were builders as well, and not sustainers. And so they start off real well, and then they just die on the vine. And so I think, for me, I try real hard as new people come to the church to get to know them, to understand how they think, to the points, are they introverts? Are they extroverts? Do they have the wherewithal to maintain the ability to take a ministry and begin to grow it? And so sometimes that can get a little tricky, because, sometimes all we know is what we hear. And so we have to be patient. And at least for me, I am now very patient, particularly if we start a new ministry and we want to implement somebody into taking that and making it better. I try to be very patient to see and recognize if their words match their actions in more of a longer period. And because, even with me, if somebody comes to me and says, hey, there's this new ministry that I really want to start, and I really feel like God's leading me, I walk it through it with them to see if it's just emotion based, or is it really a calling? And of course, is it something that we need? Because a lot of times pastors are so excited to take somebody who wants to do something that we just implement it immediately. And so there's all kinds of different levels and different scopes to implementation of ministries. But I agree wholeheartedly. There's those that get it going, cast a vision, and that's me. I like to get it going. I see a need. I like to get it going, cast a vision. But if you get into the minute details to make it successful, that's where I fall short. And I think for pastors that are listening to know it's okay. You don't have every gift, and it doesn't make you less than. It makes you wise when you know that God's given you a gift, you utilize it, and then you pass that baton to somebody else.
Yep.
I think about the, a lot of leadership books. I think the Unstuck Church, they talk about the S curve and how, you have the growth stage and then you have the sustained growth and then churches taper off. And so I'm in a church that's been going for 150 years. We just celebrated our 150 anniversary last year. And so it's weird being in different seasons where, you talked about guest services. One of the things, Luke, I'm learning how to do is how to take high-level capacity leaders in the public sector and how to streamline that into the church. And I like to think of it like, painters. Some of them, they're visioneers, and they're not necessarily the foot soldier or the person that's gonna carry it out day to day, but they might help create that system and structure or process, which once you get to just by saying that, when you say the word guest services, that means, hey, we've got a process for this, we've got a structure for this. And so you need somebody to paint that picture of what are we doing, what does it need to be, what needs to be in it, but then you need the people that can follow it out and follow that, and which is fascinating, whether it's at a volunteer level or an elder pastor level. And I think you got it right too. A lot of times we got to use our intuition and not put somebody in the wrong seat on the bus. So
Yeah, well, and one of the things that, if we're just honest, there are more sustainers than there are builders. There are more people who are capable of sustaining it and keeping it going. And so on one hand, that does, to some degree, just by like the way things work, it kind of makes builders more valuable, or at least they're perceived as more valuable. The danger is if builders think they're more valuable.
Yeah.
And as a church planner, I'm more of a builder. And the way things have tended to progress is I start the church and then hand some responsibility off to a sustainer, and start a new thing and hand something off to a sustainer. And if you're not careful, you can start to think that the builders actually are more important. Ultimately, we know it's that God builds his church. So I'm not trying to, usurp that, but just there's some people with just more catalytic starter energy.
Sure.
I've had to really come, really it's through seeing my own inability to sustain things. I've gone, I might get more attention. I might get more like attaboys because I'm the catalytic energy, but this thing is only healthy if a bunch of really great people are there to sustain it and help shepherd it and help improve it. And that really is what we want. I mean, I'm kind of too old now to care about a big church.
Yeah.
I want a healthy one. And I hope that's what everybody listening wants also. And I just think if you're going to have a healthy one, you got to have all the parts of the body, you're going to have all those different gifts, and you got to really value and unleash them.
No, yeah, you're right. Leadership development is needed a lot in our day and age too, to help them, not get bored once, they've done their part, and how they can implement that in different parts of the strategy. Dad, any final thoughts on this before we move on?
Yeah, I just think builders with maturity are sustainers when they know to sustain. So they're actually sustaining when they bring other people in to be a part of the work of the ministry. And so that's when you have maturity within a builder.
I like that.
Yeah, that's good. Well, hey, so that was kind of a leadership segue. Now let's shift gears to preaching. Luke, you said in one of your recent things, you kind of talked about what separates the best preachers from everyone else, and you had a few good points. Would you share some of your findings with us and what you have observed, just the difference between the two in the landscape of preaching that we see today?
Yeah, I mean, preaching is, I love preaching. I could talk about preaching all day. I love listening to preachers. I mean, it's just one of those things. Just like as a hitter, I used to love watching anyone want to talk about hitting. I could talk about preaching all day. And what's really interesting with preaching is how subjective it is.
Mm.
You know, like you have someone you go like, man, I so resonate with that preacher, and someone else like, yeah, I don't know, they're fine. And, and it is interesting, but I bet whoever people like, some of the realities of, I identified these different gaps, right? That there's all these gaps in preaching, and I think the best preachers, the people we most admire as preachers, do a good job of closing the gap. So one of the gaps is an interest gap. There's the gap between what the preacher thinks is important and interesting and what the audience thinks is interesting. And the best preachers help the audience go, no, this thing that I think is really interesting, I'm going to actually help you feel like it's really interesting. So that's one. Another one is the substance. I feel like, anybody can give you just the skim off the top. Here's what's obvious. I feel like, and this is especially true, I think, today, where in the information age, we're awash in information. Joseph, we're on Twitter, right? How many times a day do you see something about Chat GPT? I mean, goodness gracious. Yep. We're awash in information, but there's an absolute drought of insight. Mm-hmm. And what Chat GPT can give you is lots of information. It is not going to give you insight. And so I think the best preachers give you insight. There's substance. There's something really there. There's something that makes you kind of do that doggy head tilt thing where you kind of turn your head and go, I got to think about that for a second. So that's one of them. I mean, I could go on, but I mean, I think the best illustration, the best preachers have great illustrations. The best preachers are, congruent. The things they're saying match the way that they're saying it. They feel authentic and connected with, when they're talking about joy, they seem joyful. When they're warning you, it feels like a warning. When they're talking about something sensitive, it feels sensitive. That sort of thing. But ultimately, I mean, my favorite of the different gaps is the last one, which is the power gap, which is really the gap between what you can accomplish and what God can. And the best rhetoric and the best preaching training and the best everything is as good as it is. But God can talk through a donkey, and God can take these ordinary, uneducated men and do things to turn the world upside down because they've been with Jesus. So, that's the part we don't see. That's the part probably we don't actually know even until the judgment, right? There's that place in Corinthians where it talks about each man's work being known for what it is, what it's built on: wood, hay, stubble, gold, silver, precious stones. We don't ultimately probably know that, even though we know who we like listening to, but the Lord does. And at some point, we'll give an account to him and rejoice in the reward that he has for us.
Luke, kind of saying that, one thing that I think just fascinates me is, I think, kind of back to the sustainer builder. If you're a builder, you have to be aware of your gifting, and vice versa. And I feel like preaching's the same way. And we're not tribal guys. Some guys are so tribal, and if you're not in their tribe, like heretic all the way, and that's not us. But I think you've got to be aware, like, even on a base level, like, hey, if we cut you open and you are a natural evangelist, you might ought to try to lean to make sure, you have good discipleship and good teaching, which is filling those gaps. And if you are a good, discipleship and you're looking in the text, but you're forgetting about the lost person on the second row, then you've got to tilt yourself this way. And I feel like I just came out of, I just finished my doctorate a few weeks ago, and I had to sit through preaching seminars and all that. And I feel like, so much of people's preaching style is based off their theological bent, which is understandable. But I feel like, at least for us, I try to take something from everybody. Like, I feel like the seeker guys feel like the reformed or theological guys, like, it's like, oh, you have great theology, but you don't care anything about practical living or application. And some of them, if it's not in the text, man, they won't say it. It's like, oh, we can't say it because it's not in the text, and they can't go off a principle. And then on the flip side, the theological guys are looking at the seeker guys who have passion and charisma and energy, but they're like, man, you don't have any depth to your sermon. And so that's been one of the fascinating things, as somebody who, we try to be bridge builders and peacemakers, and I defend guys on both sides, and I try to take take a little here, a little there. And, the tribal will be like, you got to be careful exposing yourself to, I think you have to have maturity, but that's just been one of the fascinating things. It's like you can have spiritual depth in spirit-led wisdom, but you can also have passion and excitement. It doesn't have to be boring and dry, but it doesn't have to be shallow either. And so kind of going to the gaps, that's just a personal preaching pet peeve of mine when you're reading commentary. And I appreciate yours because it's very balanced. It's not very tribal in that approach, but that's just something that I observe and I try to be conscious of when I'm preaching. Dad, what do you think on his front, on my front? What do you think?
Well, I agree, and with everything that's being said, and I wish more people would have conversation like this. And I like what you said, Luke, because I'm more of a thinker. I like to think through things, and I think a lot of times we just say, "Hey, just preach the word," but we're supposed to pray and have faith. But God gives us wisdom. He gives us wisdom to understand culture and understand how people are thinking, how they're picking things up. And for me, I've always been a little different. I didn't focus as much on the things that I'm saying, but on how people are receiving. Because at the end of the day, it's not what you say, but what they receive. It's not even just hearing, because they can hear it and then go away and then forget. But we also know that the power of the Holy Spirit grips every word that we say. And if we are saying it and doing our due diligence to understand how people are receiving God's word, then we're putting forth effort and work into understanding, the big picture of what a sermon is supposed to do. So, of course, like everybody else, I'll look at the context in the scripture and I try to be spirit-led and all that and accurate and right. But at the same time, I'm really focusing on how somebody is receiving the word, how they're hearing it. Will it be understandable? Will it make sense? Will it all piece together? And so it's almost like you're helping them to put together a puzzle hand in hand. And I think when we do that with a sermon and focus on, what they're receiving rather than what we say, I think especially in today's culture and how people are receiving it, I think it will go a long way. I heard a guy, I think it was W. Quizwall, said, if we focus more on clarity than trying to be clever, we'll go a long way. And that always stuck because, as a young man, get into ministry, I wanted to show that, hey, look, I'm worthy of this calling, and I would try to be clever and have all this special insight so I can get a pat. And when I read that, I'm like, man, if you're being clever and you're not being clear, you are wasting your opportunities in your ministry. And so that helped me to take a step back and to always try to be real clear with everything that I do and say. And also, again, it's not just faith, it's not just prayer, but trying to be wise and using the wisdom that God gives us to understand culture.
Man, I love that so much. And there's a question I ask when I evaluate some of the guys on my team that I'm growing up as preachers that I want them to ask as they evaluate me is, did the preacher seem like he cared about the people or just his message? And it's actually, and Joseph, I can send you a link to where people can download our sermon evaluation grid that we use.
Yeah.
And stuff like that if people want it. But I've listened to some preachers, and I've probably done it at times where it feels like if everybody suddenly vanished from the room, I'm not sure the guy would quit talking. He'd probably just keep going.
Yep.
And, that's what I heard from you in that is just a shepherd's heart to say, like, if I am as right as can be, but I'm not loving these people, I'm just a banging gong. I'm a noisy. And so, man, I appreciate that. And then, Joseph, to what you were saying, it's so interesting to me in the different tribes how, all the guys from North Point sound like Andy Stanley, and all the guys from Capitol Hill sound like Dever, and all the guys from Grace Community sound like MacArthur, and all the guys from Storm Grace sound like CJ.
Yep.
And it's like, what's up with that?
Yeah.
Like, why doesn't everyone just sound like they sound?
Echo chamber. Yep.
Yeah, and all those guys are great. Like, I can't blame anyone for trying to emulate good preachers.
Yep.
But I do think, finding your own voice, figuring out who you are, figuring out how the people you're leading really need to hear, God, because God's called you to lead them and the pastor, not Andy Stanley or John MacArthur. They've called you. So That's one of the challenges, I think, as we grow in our preaching.
Yep. Luke, one more, two quick questions before we take us out. You are the preaching coach, and if anybody's listening to this point, then they'll care about these nerd out details that we do. Two things. I liked your preaching calendar. Very, very color. Oh, love it. Great. Color coordinated. My dad's one of those, like, Thursday, he's like, I think I'm going to change my message. And then our other guy, Adam, he's got like the next 2 years planned out. So tell me a little bit about putting your preaching calendar together. And then the more and more, we were talking to Marcus Hayes a few weeks ago. He's talking about preaching teams. And I love the concept of, I think some of us are like, I don't want anybody writing my message. But I love the collaboration of it. But I also love, let me teach you how to preach. So those two things, real quick, any thoughts on those or insight?
Yeah, man. I mean, I love a preaching calendar because if I have a plan, I can always change it.
Yep.
That's easier than coming up with a new plan. So we try to have our sermons planned out about 9 to 12 months in advance. Part of what I like is that really just helps you accumulate resources. So I know I'm in September preaching the book of Revelation. And so if I see something interesting related to that, I can save it now. We've also, with our family of churches, we'll bring a professor in and actually do a full training day months in advance to help us have like a grid to understand that book. So I like that. I just like being able to read ahead. I think in any given week, it actually saves me time because I've dug a well that week I can now draw from that well I've been digging for months. So that's why I like that. And then, we have some collaboration in our development. I'll gather with some other teaching pastors about 10 days in advance of a Sunday. And we'll just look at the passage and kind of do almost an old fashioned Bible study.
Yep.
Go, hey, what stands out to you here? What are the big gospel threads? Is there any kind of big idea? What are people going to wrestle with? What are they going to be confused about? And then, we're not trying to, group think how to write the sermon.
Sure.
But there is a reality of like, God speaks not just to me, but he speaks to his people.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we use commentaries. That's why we care about church history. And so I think that can be a beneficial process as well.
Very cool. Well, man, this has been fun. If you're out there, preach with your own voice. Don't try to preach like somebody else. And we'll see if the Suns can make it to the finals. Y'all have a good week. Oh, next week, we got a big announcement. Shane Pruitt is coming on the pod, coming in from Dallas. So very cool. Luke, thanks for joining us. We'll definitely have you back.
Thank you.